Ready to begin here. So welcome everyone. This is our second meeting, September 15th. I didn't get too many responses on my last week's message, but I'll just post it back up. We're looking for another person to, just in case I'm not available, for a co-host. Still looking for those next week presenters. Hopefully we have a little bit more volunteers, being that that's where you kind of showcase your little application if you get it running. And then if you need help, Slack and the forums are always there. And how can we make this study group better? I crossed out tracking the time because last time we were okay with time. I think if we start running over time, we'll just close it and then just continue the discussion offline using Slack or some other means. And then we don't have that many people, hopefully. So we don't need too many groups and then come back and do a breakout session or anything. So let me ask, last time I did an overview of lesson 1 and I just went very quickly through lesson 1. Is that what you want to do, or would you rather just dive straight into Q&A and answer questions? Is anyone like really stuck in they've been burning the midnight oil and they can't figure something out? Or should I do an overview? What's your take?
I'm not against it. I would like to maybe ask about what exactly are we covering each week? You passed that that outline that somebody had prepared for what is covered on each lesson, and so I took that and made a little spreadsheet of exactly what I expect to have to do before this, because I have to manage my time super carefully.
Yeah, so this study group is mainly focused on the video lessons. So those 8 video lessons you see, you go to Fast AI, click on the mock, those 8 video lessons that are 2020 V4, they call it in the forums.
Right.
Those ones we be covering. So we don't particularly go from chapter to chapter in the book. We go more on the video lesson. So whatever the video lesson covers that's kind of up for discussion for our study review. So next week, for example, we'll do video lesson number 3, which is somewhat finishing up, I guess, chapter 2 and kind of doing chapter 3 and a little bit of 4, I think.
Okay, and so that's book chapter, right? That's not,
yes.
Okay. So today is lesson 2, video lesson 2.
Yes.
Finish
and it would be like
1,
half
2.
of chapter 1 and half of chapter 2, or the end of chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2.
And the notebooks then that are covered are part of 01 and part of 02?
It's mainly 2.
Okay.
It stops at where you deploy the application.
Got it. Because the vision thing, that wasn't in 02, was it?
Yeah, it's actually this lesson. He's finishing up this kind of chapter 1, and then he moves into the this pulling from Bing and everything. It's almost at the very end.
Right. I mean, I finished all of 02, production notebook, and I didn't remember a vision of
Yeah. Okay. We'll take
a look at the vision tutorial.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That was like one of the challenge questions in the first chapter.
Okay. I just caught the very end of what you were saying there. I just want to make sure that I have the right cadence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a little confusing. I wish they did per chapter per video instead of.
Yeah,
but I understand they were trying to do this like in a course, school setting.
Condensed a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So I kind of do an overview, and so this time last time I did the little Word text document, and then I kind of did just ran through it very quickly. This time I thought, try something different. What I'll do this time is I'll see if, that's not supposed to be there. Well, you can think about what tips you would have given yourself, because he introduces this, I think in chapter 1, and it's in the middle, but does anyone remember what this part was?
Yeah, that's creating the labels, the function that creates labels, and then creating the data loaders.
Yeah, so he touches on a couple of points here. He's talking about how the data set is upper, and then he mentions this valid percentage 0.2, right? So hopefully everyone remembers that. Anyone remember the seed number, 42?
That's
So
just a
that,
guarantee that you get the same results every time.
yeah, so if you're running this and you're showing somebody, if they run this same thing, if they use that seed 42, it will pull the same kind of result set. So you don't get your numbers or whatever mixed up or anything. So if you keep using that same seed, of course, if you change the seed or don't put it, it'll just randomize it. So that's the whole point of the seed. So I'll just basically
Well,
cut to,
it's not really that you can get that you're going to get the same results. You might not get the same results exactly because there's some randomness in the training, but it's just to make sure that you're solving the same problem every time. So
yes,
like
yes,
if you change your model and you get much better performance, you know it's not because you picked an easier validation set
yeah.
randomly.
So I thought I'd just clip out pieces that were important in the video or what I looked at as important, and then have somebody comment. So like this one, when you train a model, you must always have both a training and validation set. You must measure accuracy of the model only on the validation set. We're cool with that? Everyone understand overfitting and everything? So your model doesn't memorize your data? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Overfitting is the single most important challenging issue. I thought that was interesting. I thought getting the data would be challenging.
Or labeling.
Or labeling, yes.
But I think he's referring to how much you can trick yourself into thinking you have a good model and actually have a really terrible model for unseen data.
Yes.
So the manual part is the data, collecting the data and labeling the data, but this is what destroys your model.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's also maybe talking about like the typical situation for people like us, like individual practitioners. Like if you're Google and you have 4 billion items in your data set, then you're not going to overfit because you have like too much data. But you know, if you just have a few thousand items, that's probably a much bigger possibility.
And then transfer learning.
Yeah, here you're describing that typically you would fit a model, right? But because it's transfer learning, you're fine tuning it. From our last week's conversations, the model is pre-trained, the weights are assigned, the parameters are assigned, and we talked about the head last week.
Yes.
And once that head has been replaced, and you run this function, it is depending on the number of epochs you set up, it will readjust those weights.
Right.
Right.
And I think you just don't start from scratch and start with layer 1, layer 2. You already use a pre-trained model.
I have a question about overfitting. Is overfitting a result of too few training samples or something else?
Well, it could be too few training samples or too many epochs. You know, if you think about the problem where you're trying to do like a regression fit and you use too high order of polynomial,
Right.
like you get these big sweeps.
Right, I got that in my mind,
Yeah.
sure. Now, how do you connect that to few training? Is that a similar thing or different?
So the relation to the data size can be thought of, and it's a generic sort of a way to look at it, is a generalization problem. So, let's say we have a population out there which we're trying to model using a function, and when you have too few data points, when the actual test data comes in, the test, because you have too few data points, the function that neural network, or in this case, this setup approximated, may fit too sharply, right?
Okay.
And then the external, when you go to the test data set, it will just not recognize it, right?
I see. So somehow the fewer, the lower number of samples actually kind of behaves a little bit like too many orders in the linear regression.
Ordinality of the function, I think, as RK was explaining, is one of the symptoms, or could be one of the causes of overfitting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was also thinking about it in terms of selection bias. I don't know if that, unless your selection of the training sample is really random, you can have some kind of bias in there too.
Right. So everything appears to be less varied than you would hope in the training set.
Right.
Okay, that sounds.
Another aspect of it is that if you use a bigger model, like with more parameters, that will have more of a tendency to overfit. So if you use ResNet 34, but then you change it to ResNet 150, whatever, that will be more likely to overfit, just because it has more knobs to twiddle.
Really zeroed in on just your training set.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
And then it's similar to what I was saying about the polynomial. As you add
order,
a ninth order polynomial would be able to fit exactly. But it's fitting the noise. It's not fitting the actual data. It's not like I didn't see whose name it was because he's not on the screen, but like he was saying, the generalization is what you're looking for. And once you get too specific to your data set is when you get bad.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have this fine tuning. It says, number one, use one epoch to fit just those parts of the model necessary. I guess that goes back to your comment, right? So that you can get it correct. And then it says the number of epochs requested when calling the method to fit the entire model, updating the weights and layers. Everyone okay with that?
I guess in really broad terms, I'm okay with that, but it's definitely something I'm looking forward to seeing in more depth later on. I mean, it makes sense as like a very, very first conceptual pass, but yeah, I couldn't really explain in detail what that means at this point. I don't know if anybody else had a different experience of it at this point in the book.
I think that's part of his teaching method, where he does the top down. So we're all kind of in the dark, on the real implications. I mean, I feel like that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I can go back one, isn't that like that one where he says fine tune one? And
I think it's fit one cycle.
Yeah.
And that one is used for when you don't have transfer learning. So that's when you're starting from scratch.
Yeah. So again, he says to experiment and try to get your own data set. Right? And hopefully it's not that different than the data set he was showing, like your NASCAR ones. And then he gives this huge picture. I don't know if you remember what deep learning is good at and what they're not good at. Everyone remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then how they're not very good in that recommendation. Okay. And then he also said something.
Yeah, ironically about the recommendation, the question I typed it in the chat, but question I had about transfer learning is, where do you get a model from? And I know there's different things out there, but also like what's important for the criteria for a model? So for example, I want to do astronomy, and I was looking at, okay, well, if someone's doing microscopy, maybe that's a good model to look at. Or is it, in the course, he focuses on this this general vision model that he seemed to use for everything. Is it okay to use that for a specialty application? That's what I'm confused about.
I think the first part he's doing vision, but I think he'll get to these. We haven't seen the other ones just yet, I think, but the vision is one where he starts. It's the one.
But I think the answer is that it's definitely worth a try.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, he talks about actually using the vision models for stuff that's totally unrelated to, for converting data that's not image at all into an image, like sound or stuff like that, and it seems to work pretty well for that. So
Yeah, and there was the computer virus example too.
yeah. So apparently the pre-trained vision stuff learns some kind of universally useful features.
Right, I noticed that. I noticed in the beginning of, I think it was the end of chapter 1 or beginning of chapter 2, he showed the different convolutions that happened at the first and second and third layers.
Yeah.
Yep. That visualization is really, really cool.
Right, and since when I say astronomy, I'm talking about like amateur astronomy, like taking pictures and having, basically I'm going to try to train a model that will clean it up instead of someone having to manually do stuff in software. So that's a vision application, right? Super resolution, those kind of things. That's what I'm looking for. So my question is, can I use that same, start off at that same place, or do I need to look for a similar already trained model? Because I do know he made that statement. Well, if you're going to retrain, this general thing is better to use. So I'm not sure how far that goes.
So it's interesting, like the vision stuff is, so far it's been classification. We've been doing classification. A cleanup model is not going to be classification as much as it is making decisions on when to make a pixel be considered a piece of noise or a good piece. And that's more of an LSTM approach. The neighboring pixels, the patterns of neighboring pixels might imply that that the next pixel should be light gray when actually it's black. Therefore, it's a piece of noise. So I wouldn't necessarily think just because it's stuff you're doing on an image, it's necessarily a vision classification type of application.
And I would agree with that. I don't know if anybody saw Jeremy's presentation at Stanford a few weeks ago, but he did a whole talk on exactly what you're talking about, where he's been working on this super resolution project. And there is a paper out there. I'll see if I can find the link. But what he's doing is he's using that for medical stuff. So there's this weird problem where the longer you, the faster you scan it, with whatever I don't remember the technology they're scanning it with, but the longer you scan it to take the actual image, the more it actually breaks down the tissue. And so what they're doing is they're doing an actual faster scan that's low resolution, and then they train this neural net to go in and increase the resolution. I'll find some links and post them to the forum, to the Slack channel. But I think that's exactly what you're looking for, and it's amazing.
And it sounds like whatever model they have, if I'm going to do transfer learning, I probably want to find that model if I can. And
as well, if it's available.
There also are some examples of doing stuff like that, and I don't know if they have it in this course, but the course from the previous version, the last version of the course, had some examples of doing stuff like that, like doing increasing resolution. So you could try to look at that. I don't know if this version of the course has that. So I know they have actual notebooks that you can try out.
I wanted to mention that I was able to take like 7,000 documents that were classified on my hard drive and then just kind of convert them to images in Python. And I ran through like the same code, the like bare code, and it did pretty well. I mean, it was able to classify like a bunch of financial documents, like this is a bank statement, this is that. But the
Cool.
only thing that happened was I decided that the reason why some of them weren't working is it needed more resolution. Like it's a small picture. And then like I started to run into the problem that like my graphics card, as you increase the picture size, you run out of memory on, I'm running it locally, but.
So those documents were PDFs? You taking the?
Yeah, I was converting the PDF to an image. I had I wrote something, actually in Node.js. I just wrote the conversion.
And you classified to what categories?
Well, I'm an accountant, so they're more like tax documents, and I was able to say this is a 1040 tax return. This is a
Sweet.
and
Very
like
cool.
the thing is, when you have like stuff, there's scans from like TurboTax or something. Like there's a lot of extraneous pages, so I put that all to records. I just put it to like one category, and I'm not sure that I should have done that. Like I'm not sure what you do with, like if you're looking at like bears and then there's a dog in there, like what do you do with the just extra?
Throw it out. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Curtis is still there. I don't see him now, but I posted a link to the decrapify package that Jeremy put together, which is what he calls his super resolution, in the chat.
That's fascinating.
All right, let's keep moving on. Then he introduces the case study for using the high temperature and high humidity for COVID-19. And I think the main point is this, right, to the null hypothesis. And he gets to the p-value and starts talking about that. And he shows that picture and what the p-value is. And then after he explained it, he says, don't use it. Well, he tells you why, why you shouldn't be using that as a measure of anything. And then he points out this guy, Frank Harrell, and his study. And then this is Jeremy's product, right? Drivetrain approach he made for an insurance company. And then he's going over this. And I think the whole thing is the levers, to change the levers and then see how close you get. It's similar to the weights, right, that we have. And then he comes out with this stage. I'll stop there for anyone who wanna. He does spend a little bit of time here talking about each box, I think.
I think he spent a lot of his career doing this, so he wanted to give it the right kind of time for himself. I enjoyed the whole discussion. It may not be relevant necessarily to specifically what we're doing, but it was very insightful. That everything has to be practically driven. It seems, doable for a good reason. All those words that we wish we heard more of in our usual jobs.
Yeah. And then he gets to the big one, right? Sort of like the end of the piece, and I thought that was kind of the biggest piece, is this data block.
Yeah.
So I think I need to spend more time on this. And he goes through it pretty quickly, but I think this is the big piece of the whole piece. Because if you don't understand data blocks, you might not be able to do the other models as you go through. So anyone want to take a stab here at re-explaining this?
To me, it looks like a kind of a typical chaining function where you do one thing, then another thing, then another thing. And in this case, he's basically building his data set by setting up where the data is coming from and doing it functionally so that you can define the function somewhere else to do the actual work. In this case, I guess it's pulling in image files, getting those files, splitting it into a training and validation set, getting the labels, and then doing some kind of transformation on each item, all in one function call. like you said, if you don't get this, not that you have to get it, but you have to, I guess, understand every piece, because we get to change every piece if we want. So we should know how to do this. Pretty impressive stuff. And what I like about the whole thing is that this is really super complicated, but this would take me 4 weeks just to understand if it wasn't done as a function. And I can understand it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then in just one day build something that's so useful, like we've done our little test. So
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I have been playing with scikit-learn for a while, and this would typically be getting from identifying the source of the data to having it prepped to the point that it is ready to be run by a learner. Everything is put together in an abstracted way in this single, so to say, single line of code, right? I think it's an amazing way FastAI has treated the libraries.
I guess the alternative perspective is that by abstracting things so much, it's really easy to miss what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, I come from R mostly in most of my past data work, and similarly, like, you have to specify so many things, and you'd have like a totally separate data frame for validation and training, and you'd make sure that the types are correct for what you want, and you'd, I don't know, be pretty thoughtful about how the randomization is done. And it's not that you're not doing that in this case, but it's also, it just seems a lot easier to miss something or to obscure something behind the level of abstraction.
I think what you said as a, sorry, just a second. I think what you said, that as a frame is the key, right? Between R and Python and other frameworks and stacks, frame as a unit of manipulation is so similar to what we see in Excel or in matrices. Makes perfect sense, and manipulating at that level gives you a closer sense to how it is being done. But yeah, this is still higher. Yeah.
So with that, he begins to.
I did have a question about the resize. I noticed he put it at 128 and he's running things pretty quickly, but I just wonder is that really a reasonable thing to use for a lot of things, or is it something that I should expect to need to change?
You may want to play with it. I did a little toy app classifying different types of driveways, blacktop, gravel, or concrete. And I used just the resize, and it did pretty well. And I thought, oh, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to use some other augmentation transform thing. And it completely destroyed it. So just by changing that one aspect, it changed my accuracy by a large degree. So I think it's going to be dependent on the images that you have, but it's easy to change. You just change the one function call.
So, I mean, it's very interesting, the single image manipulation. And if you're building with a huge data set, you have to use some automated way like this one. But as in the chapter and more from a example I had to do, I was taking image of tablets, medicine tablets, and they were all over the place. Even though I was using it on my desk here and putting a camera and taking pictures, I had to zoom in, zoom out each of them. So I did it on 80 images and center them and place them. And to size them, I had to bring it into different like photo apps and everything. So yes, I mean, having such a function is very handy. We also did something to share another practical example. We did something with fibers and connectorization and all, and just to recognize the object and to focus solely on the problem we were solving in that video clip, we had to take out the other clip, other edges and all, like he's describing in the book, in the chapter. So it's a very nifty function that they have here.
I also think that item transforms are not in this lesson. I think he skips it and then he even skips it in the lab work, and then he moves directly to the app and stuff. So I think we're gonna see it again in lesson video 3. So just stay tuned till next week, I guess. Any other? So that's
just a quick question, if anybody knows off the top of their head. In going through the material in the Bears classifier, in showing us some of the different sizing and augmentation and things like that, he would often call the bears.new to make a new data loader. And I was wondering if anybody knew off the top of their head, like what kind of inheritance that had from the previous Bears object, if any, or if it was just totally from scratch. Does it keep all the stuff that you don't change? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It just makes a copy, changing the parameters that you specify.
Cool. Thank you.
any other questions?
I have a question. I was working with like files in mine, and I was sort of cleaning it manually, and I wondered if does that mess with the random seed if I start like renaming, like I find I mislabeled something. Going back to like what he was talking about opacity compared to R, like.
Just right off the bat from what you're saying, I think they're disconnected issues or like disconnected questions, but I may be wrong. The reason I said that is seeding in this case, or the randomness that he's seeking is if you take a normal distribution or any distribution of the underlying data set, how would you sample to pick 30% as valid for validation and rest of the 70 as training? That's what seed is doing. So in this case, if the treatment of the images you are doing in any way for the pictures you've taken is uniform, then that will be randomly picked up. So 42 should not make a difference. But it's
I mean, are you asking about whether if you clean up the data set, so you move some of the images around,
Yeah, relabel
categories?
Them. Does that change the validation set? He just said it was important to keep the validation set the same.
Relabel.
But
well, if you relabel, probably not. But I think if you delete some of them, that you might have that issue. Like if you remove some of the images.
I mean, like, in the notebook, how when you go into the cleaner, you're like, oh, this really should be like a black bear. You got this from the wrong search. It's like, I'm just doing it manually on the image file name. So when I rerun it.
So I think that the main consideration from my perspective on that one is that you should make sure that you're doing the same steps to the training set and to the validation set, hopefully without knowing which is training and which is validation.
Yeah,
if you're making some kind of manual edits to only one of those, then you're probably going to throw things off in some way.
Okay.
Fair.
Thank you.
So is Butch on the line? Butch, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry.
Are you able to show what you see?
Yeah, I think I'll try. It's gonna be rough, so.
Okay.
So first, I'm gonna probably post.
Can I make you
link?
co-host and then you can share your screen, or?
Yeah. Just give me a second. I just got your message.
Yeah.
10 minutes before or 5 minutes before it started. So I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna. Okay, give me a second.
So I think you can.
Wait, give me a second. I'm looking for my.
Do you guys know if I have to stop sharing or? And then
I think you do.
I think you have to stop sharing if someone else wants to
I
share.
stop sharing it and then he starts, but then he's got to start the recording, right? Or no?
It should stay recording.
Okay. So I just stop sharing.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start sharing. By the way, as a background, this is just there's this fantastic forum post that I think Andy linked to in the Slack, or somebody else, Sujata or something. Somebody they linked to it. It's the best. If you haven't run your model yet on Binder, and you don't know how to run your model as an app, I think the Binder thing is the easiest way. In the previous iteration, there was another way they did it. I think it was called Render. You can still actually use that, but I think Binder is the easiest one. So this is just like somebody made a fantastic post. I kind of did some stuff with GitHub where you can like build a repo as a template. This guy who wrote the post is in the forums, and I think you can see it in the Slack. Some place in the Slack channel. There's a link to that forum post. Mm-hmm. So what I did was made it into a template, and then added detailed specific instructions so that you can basically just click and follow along. And I'm gonna try and post that link in the chat now. So, and then I'll share my screen to show you how you can probably use it. Oh, by the way, Andy, how long do you want this? Because this can take a long time. So I'm just gonna go through it and step
we have
through it
questions,
quickly.
I guess.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go through it, and if you have questions, I'm just gonna go through it very quickly.
If I had this, you would have saved me the entire Sunday.
Oh, wow, sorry. No, I was like probably working on it that same time, I guess. So didn't catch you in
Pay
time
attention,
quickly
everybody.
enough.
Save yourself 10 hours of work.
Sorry. Yeah, I was working on it around the same time because I was like, I was teaching somebody else how to go through and build Binder, and I saw that there was something missing in the lectures, and I think, well, it's not going to be in the book because it's something that changes all the time. And looking back at the lectures, I don't think Jeremy really went through all the steps in detail, especially if you don't know stuff like building your own. Well, if your background is programming, you probably know how to use GitHub. But if you're like not familiar with GitHub at all, so can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a step-by-step on the part where how do you get it to Binder? And this kind of assumes that you already have your Voila app running. So the first thing is probably get your Voila app running. That's the first thing, is getting that part. And that's kind of been documented, I think, by Jeremy in the lectures and in the book. In the book, yeah, I think so. So anyway, getting to that part where it's basically a step-by-step. So if you create a GitHub account, if you don't have a GitHub account, you create one. I'm kind of assuming that in this case, most probably everyone has a GitHub account at this point, right? And then you can clone this repo. Clone this repo as a template. Wait, I think I made a mistake. Wait, give me a second. Oh, sorry. I have the wrong link. Sorry. I'm trying to. This is the old. Wait. Because I was testing this out. I have the wrong link. Sorry. There you go. Sorry. I think I posted the wrong link. I was trying it out, so I created another repo to like, so I'm not sure if I posted that right link. Give me a second. How do I stop? Wait. Am I doing this? How do I get, for some reason, I can't get the chat now. I'm looking at, I'm trying to get the chat.
Yeah.
Can you see this? I'm
I
not,
posted a link in the chat.
yeah. I'm just trying to find where I can add
I can put it.
that.
RK did it for you.
Oh, yeah, I posted the wrong link. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, this is the right link. So the idea is you can basically step by step create a GitHub account if you don't have one. You can click on this link to generate your own copy. Kind of like, I don't know if you guys have tried Fast Pages to create your blogs using Fast AI's project. So there's a link that you click and it'll generate a new GitHub repo for you. And then the idea is you then clone that repo into your machine where you're running your Jupyter notebook. So it's basically just doing the same stuff. But you kind of need a terminal. So I added a picture of how do you open a terminal in GitHub, in Jupyter. So there's a, what do you call this?
Dialog.
A dialog box, yeah. So, and then if you go into your Jupyter environment and Git is not installed, I just linked to more instructions. And then when I found that, because normally when you create your Jupyter environment doesn't have a user, a Git user defined, this is just configuration. And then I kind of pointed out that there's a convenient way to push GitHub, but you need to set up, what do you call that, an SSH key. So I kind of link, it's more like linking stuff, finding, this is the stuff that you find all over if you're stepping through going through the motion of building this. It's like, oh, it says I need this. So I kind of went through that process and put links in so that it helps everybody out. But I don't kind of try to duplicate all the instructions because it's better explained somewhere else. So I kind of went through that. I encountered this problem where on Paperspace, turns out you do have Git, but you don't have SSH. So if you want to use that, and I said, this is optional. Again, putting up an SSH key is an optional thing. And then you clone your repo. So you either do the Git at GitHub link or you do an Git clone HTTPS link. The only thing is when you push it, you need to enter your GitHub ID and password every time you push your code. And then since this tutorial assumes that you already have your export.pkl file that you created, and then you strip down your notebook from chapter 2 to create your Voila app. So this is just step by step, going through the motion. Oh, yeah, and then goes through this thing where, because the export PKL is a large file, it's greater than 25 megabytes, which is the limit, I think, for GitHub in terms of uploading something onto your GitHub repo. So you have to run this git LFS, which is the large file storage, which allows larger files to be put into your repo. So, and then you just basically step through the code, follow the instructions. And then basically, once you have your code, your exported learner in the repo, you can run it on Binder and just follow. Again, there's more instructions in the Fast AI forums for how to run it on Binder. So I'm just gonna link to that and show you which is a fantastic resource. So this guy wrote it down. But what he did was he built his own repo and then expects you to just copy that. But I made it one step easier. Just click on that to generate your own repo and it'll copy everything over. And then for those of you who are using Colab, the problem with Colab is that it doesn't run voila, it doesn't run the widgets, but you can still build your notebook. You can still strip it down. You can still build your, what do you call this? Your exported learner. You can export your learner. And then the other problem now is because you still need to transfer your learner to your GitHub repo. And you can't do that with just the normal upload download. I tried it and it doesn't work. So I said, you gotta run LFS or something. So I basically said, okay, how do you run this? You don't have a terminal on Colab either. So you basically create a shell, and there's this nifty thing in Colab where, or I think even in Jupyter, I'm not sure, where if you type in %bash, all your next commands don't have to have this, I don't know, you have this bang, and then you put in the bash command, the shell command. You don't have to put that in. So it assumes that all your next commands are going to be shell commands. So this is easy. This is like just copy paste all that stuff and then put it in, and then you execute that and it'll run everything. And then the next thing is there's a nifty thing in Colab where you can like copy your notebooks to a GitHub repo. So there's a link here that basically when you click on this, it'll open up, it'll connect to your GitHub repo. You'll have to authorize Colab to allow access to your repos, and basically save it in your GitHub repo. So you can just link it, save it to your template, to your binder template, and then the last thing is, because if you're using Colab, everything goes away. So you just basically connect to your Google Drive and copy things over. And that's basically all the instructions I have. So if you have any questions,
Wow, yeah. That's awesome, Butch.
Incredible.
Yeah. I tried it with just one guy so far, and it worked out fine with him, except for the last step where we forgot to like follow the instructions on the forum post. So it's like, make sure just read through the forum post step by step. It's a very good resource. And then just also follow this for the part where it's not so clear on the forum post. And basically that's it. And I guess it's more for like people who aren't used to like doing this stuff again and again. If you've been using GitHub for a while, it's probably standard stuff. And I also like added like the itty bitty things like, oh, don't forget to like change the, what do you call this? The if you're on Binder and you have this path to notebook file, and then you forget to like change from file to URL, then it won't run, or you forget the add voila render in the path. It's like little bits and pieces that you figure out after a while, after you banged your head on the table several times. It's like, oh, there's this comment somewhere else that tells you how to fix that problem. So I just kind of pulled all of them together and hopefully helps somebody else out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Butch.
Awesome. Yes, I'll try this probably tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. And hopefully give me feedback if
Yep.
there's an area, because I already went through this with one guy, stepping through it, and we found some problems and I kind of fixed it afterwards.
Thanks, Butch.
Yep, no problem.
Were there any other questions on that?
I'll probably have questions next week when I actually try it.
Yeah, no, post it in the forums and in that link where I kind of posted a reply back in that link on the forums. So just add it there or comment on the create an issue in GitHub and then tell, because that's how I'll fix things. Is if I find problems.
You know, in his using the render path, whatever the render thing is,
Yeah.
for Voila, is that assuming you have a Jupyter server running?
For the binder thing, it's running actually a Jupyter binder behind the scene.
I do know what binder is, but before binder, there was just the Voila render. And is that being run by the Jupyter Notebook server?
Yep.
Okay. I'm on GCP. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm on GCP and I don't get that URL. I don't, it's.
You should there's instructions on how to install the Voila. There's a pip install Voila, and then you type this thing in called Jupyter. I don't know.
I did all that.
I was kind of assumed, but
I did all that, but up in my browser, I don't have that same URL that I can replace things. In GCP, it's its own little environment. And
it's a standard Jupyter notebook, right?
It is. But it's got.
There should be this thing that pops up on the menu beside there's this keyboard thing, and then there's I don't know what you call it. There's a pop-up thing that says Voila, and that kind of tells you that Voila is running. And when you click that, it'll open up a notebook, the same notebook, but under the Voila thing, so it doesn't show the.
Okay.
I don't know.
I never saw that, but thank you.
I don't know if I have. Give me a second.
In the lesson, he just changed the URL to /render.
Yeah. I can show you. I can share a notebook. Give me a second.
Let me stop sharing.
Just to show you. Give me a second. I can. I have a Jupyter running on my notebook with Voila.
Right.
So.
I can run it I can run it in a Docker container locally. No problem.
I mean, Jupyter. If you have Jupyter running, give me a second.
Right. So GCP is much different. I'll paste my GCP link. And find the chat. Where is the chat?
Wait. Give me a second. Where can I find? Okay, give me a second. It's when you're looking for stuff that you can't find it. Sorry. Okay, there you go. Let me try and open up something. Okay, here you go. Huh. That's weird. Okay, now my Voila is, oh, there you go. Okay. I can share a screen if you're, you can share. Let's see. Okay. So this is just the normal, the Fastbook stuff. I don't know if you see this Voila
no.
button.
Got it.
So if you click on that, it'll open up, and maybe Dave, you can share your notebook. And if it shows up with this Voila, that means that Voila is running. And I think there's instructions kind of at the end. I'm trying to.
Oh yeah, I did them all. I did the whole thing, and I don't see the Voila running. So I'll bet there's a GCP nuance to it.
Here.
Did all that.
There's this pip install, and then actually there's a mistake here. It should be --. I think. Yeah,
that failed on me. That actually failed. That step actually failed.
Yeah, and the reason for that is you just forgot the --.
Crazy. All right.
Yeah, there's a minor. It's a minor.
Minor but critical.
Dash. It's one of those things. It's like it's not, obviously no software is perfect, and even the course materials do have. But the thing is, if you the good thing is Jeremy's actively working on this all the time. So if you point it out on the forums or I don't know, go to Discord and just tell them, yeah, and it usually gets fixed the next day. They're pretty.
It's corrected in the book too, so.
Yeah, I would raise it on the GitHub. Like if you go to the GitHub,
Yeah.
these notebooks, I bet you they'll fix it very quickly.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why it says to download a clean copy, a new updated copy when you start to do your work because there's bug
Yeah,
fixes.
but I think even the latest one still has this. But because the reason for that is because it's commented out and nobody runs it. So I think nobody noticed until you try it. And then somebody mentioned it on the forum. So it's fixed. There's a fix there in the forums. So again, it's one of those annoyances things where, yeah. But basically, yeah, you can get it to run. And once you have that, you should have this button called voila, and when you click on that, it'll open it up for you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have the button.
Ah,
Very
okay. So, yeah.
Sorry, I'll look into it. I'll look into it. Thank you.
No problem. Okay.
Thanks, Butch.
Cool. Yeah, man.
No problem.
So it's just missing that first dash, right?
Yeah.
Even that didn't fix it for me. It still came back with some issue, but it might be, my issue might be GCP related. I'm running on Google Cloud Platform, so.
I also ran into problems with GCP and eventually did get it working, but unfortunately didn't document my steps to doing so. But just a lot of Googling of error messages got me there.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah, I just did this like 10 minutes before we started.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm Anya. Does it matter if I'm running my Jupyter notebook on Windows or some other OS? Because I'm getting a strange error about the path.
I think you'll have trouble running it on Windows because the problem is it needs these like NVIDIA Docker libraries and they're pretty complicated to set up. So do you have an NVIDIA graphics card?
Well, so on Windows, I'm only trying to run the application, not learning the model. I'm doing the model in GCP.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to deploy and using GitHub and voila. And I'm getting an error with Windows path, and I'm wondering if anybody's have any good luck with Windows just deploying the app.
Do you know what it's referencing that it can't find on your path?
It gives me, so basically there's a code saying path equals, class path, and it gives me an error with POSIX path, which I know is it's a Linux file system. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah. Just I think I kind of saw this a little bit in the Discord where somebody was saying, I'm running stuff on Windows, and basically Jeremy was saying, if you want to avoid all those little annoyances, you got to try to run, I think, there's something called WSL. I'm not sure. That kind of runs like Linux, like on Windows.
That's the Windows.
Yeah, I use it.
Yeah, so WSL. I think you'll get much better results if you use that. I'm not sure because I don't run Windows.
Just run Docker and be done.
Yeah, I would
yeah.
strongly suggest Docker.
Yeah. The other thing is maybe you can try Docker.
yeah, that's a lot of sysadmin work. I'm trying
that's the other thing.
running, not sysadmin.
You will never look back. You will be a different person after that.
Yeah, Docker is awesome because if you screw up a Jupyter instance, you can just like dump it. I mean, you can just reset the container.
It's not that hard actually to run Docker. To install it, it's just like any other application. And once you, I think the bigger problem is once you have Docker and you're not familiar with Linux, And when you try to install Linux the first time and go through that process of building Docker and stuff, that's where it'll probably start, taking a long time. But
That's
running
true.
Docker itself,
Slippery
setting
slope.
up, it's gonna be fine. But I think as a general advice, basically, Jeremy was saying they basically use Linux more or less for running their Jupyter, but he's running on, by the way, Windows. I think he has a Surface notebook, so I think it's fine. It's just that in terms of actually running Jupyter Notebook, it's much better to just run it on a
Well, you
Linux
notice his URLs they're all 10.1 dot something. His actual Jupyter server is some other box. No question about that. We should do a sidebar maybe on Docker. That would, because it's so empowering. I don't even use environments anymore. I got so confused about environments. I said, screw it. I just bring up an entire Docker container with everything I need on it. I run my notebook server, and there's a Docker Hub instance that's like one line. You can just run Docker space, Docker Hub instance, and bind the local directory to the directory in the container, and you bring it up, and you're running Jupyter server on your local drive. Done. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
I'd be happy to give a
fun.
presentation on a sidebar if we wanted.
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
Yep, same here. I've been using Linux and virtual environments and keep hearing that I need to learn Docker, but haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, me too.
Are you guys saying that you can run that on Windows?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The thing is that like you can run Docker on Windows, but like the thing is on these with the NVIDIA, it's like they have WSL2 and it's like fastering right now. It's not stable, but probably by the end of the year, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you'll be able to run these libraries with it.
Oh, the actual. I was trying to at least stay within the bounds of Anya's issue of just wanting to run something simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll have GPU support in Docker and Windows shortly.
Oh, cool. But just step one would be probably a useful little exercise.
Yeah, I built a late last year. I was going to do this Fast AI course, but I decided to wait for the 2020. But I built a little Windows machine with NVIDIA GPU, a previous generation one. So because I was going to get the next, but it's just sitting there idle. I decided to not even bother, hearing that it's all the issues people are having, and I got paper space gradient instead. I'm happy with that.
Cool.
I have access to Windows with a GPU at work, but I don't want to mess it up installing all the Fast AI libraries. So I'm like pulling my hair out.
Oh.
Yeah, you might try Paperspace.
Yeah, maybe Paperspace, because I like GCP. I'm used to GCP. But maybe I'll try out Paperspace. Thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Andy, I don't have anything like a presentation like what Butch did, but I was just going to show an image of the super resolution. If you let me share my screen.
Sure. Let's see. What do I do? Did I make you?
Unmute. Okay. Yeah. So this is an image from Jeremy's presentation. I just wanted to throw this up here. I posted a link to his presentation in the chat for anybody who's interested, but you can see the results of what his super resolution does. It's quite amazing as far as fixing pixelation and the clarity and everything. And then
That's pretty cool.
is that showing up for you guys?
Yeah. I see.
Okay. And then over here, I was going to mention after, do you see these bar charts?
Sure.
Yep.
This is a alternative I found the other day at work that I'm planning on starting to use. It's Message Pack instead of Pickle. And if you look at this transfer, like the packing and unpacking rates. So this is items per second, and Pickle's way down here, and message pack is up here. So it's like a ridiculous speed up. But per the Butch conversation about having to use a large file system, you can see that message pack actually packs the data into about half the size of Pickle. So it might be a good opportunity. You know, I'm looking at using it at work, but I thought just because the large file size came up, I'd mention it.
Yeah, it stays under that limit.
Yeah. And I'll send, I mean, I'm doing a lot of upload download stuff where I'm moving, you know, data frames that have up to 2 million rows of data. And this is going to be a game changer, I hope, because that's pretty painful.
So is there a Python package for message pack?
Yeah. It's just if you go to PyPI.
Okay. Yeah. Then definitely that might be something interesting, especially if it preserves the weights. Because if you think about it, Pickle is just a way to save your weights down to a model and then rehydrate it back, right? So
right.
If it's much faster, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
maybe go to Discord and hit up Jeremy about it, because that's a good addition to like Fast AI.
Yeah, and it runs
or even Pytorch, I think.
So the package provides CPython bindings. I thought it was Python, but maybe it's CPython bindings. So that's where it's getting its speed from, and it's more or less a JSON format.
Oh.
So JSON's already faster than Pickle, but then with this, you get even more speed up.
What about the size?
So JSON's right here for speed.
Not for speed. What about for the size, though?
It's marginally better for size. What is that? Maybe 10% smaller than JSON, but it's 50% smaller than Pickle.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's a big savings.
So I put a link to this article and also the PyPI package. So for anybody who's interested, I started messing with it the other day, and it has some dependencies that I had to get installed, and my boss was yelling at me about getting my job done. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm going to shelve this, but I'm going to attempt to not forget about it. So this is a good reminder for me. And let's see, how do I get back to, how do I turn my screen share off? The button's gone.
Could be at the bottom.
Oh, here it is. It's at the top.
I did have a question about inference. So it looks like with these, with Binder, you can make a web app. So somebody that has access to the internet, that kind of device can use that model. But what if you want to deploy on an edge device, kind of like a Jetson Nano or something like that? I guess you can, he's showed us up to the step where you can grab the model and compress it. But, what do you do after that? Do you guys know if there's anything that he's shown that anyone uses that kind of thing?
I haven't used a Jetson Nano, but I have used a Raspberry Pi for inference, but you can just load Python on it and it just runs, basically more or less like a Linux box.
Okay, so it sounds like I should go to the NVIDIA forums and ask there, because like once I get the model.
I think he was just saying that like a mobile phone doesn't run Python natively, so like it's not a good thing. But I think anything that's like a computer, like a Raspberry Pi, if it runs Python, it's the training that's the high overhead.
Right. Yeah, the Jetson Nano does have a Python on it. It's kind of like a Pi. It has an OS that you put on a little memory card. You stick it on there, and it's I forgot what kind of Linux they use, but it's Linux. It's running Linux.
Curtis, I'm not sure if you, but if you go over to the forums and go search for Jetson Nano, I think there's some articles that I didn't read them myself, but I kind of like saw them a while back. But so there's some discussion on that, and I'm not sure if anybody was successful, but I guess you can look for more resources there. Yeah, but if you're thinking of edge devices like mobile, I know there's like a way to do it using an intermediate format called ONNX, but that's a whole nother area. And I remember this guy, his name is Wade, and he was like our guru teaching us during the lessons. So we had a beginner session every Thursday, and he was explaining that it's just a lot of bother, and it kind of moves your focus away from the course because there's just a lot of overhead trying to get these things to run. So I guess it's for a matter for like, if you're really interested in it and do it and start doing it understand that it's not the course's focus to do that. So if you really want to focus on just the course, then it's a lot of overhead, like having to set up stuff like, and the same advice is like, that's the reason why it doesn't recommend like running things on Windows, because it just takes away your time from focusing on the lessons and that kind of stuff. So I guess it's a personal preference, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely there's some discussion there, and you can look, go to NVIDIA and ask there. But basically FastAI is built on PyTorch. So the same models that you build are PyTorch models, except again, FastAI adds this additional stuff, but you can like take that out and basically add them back in. So whatever runs for PyTorch on Nano, you can basically probably adapt it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So that was the demos. Hopefully next week, we'll have a lot of volunteers showing off their application. So next week, there's that little piece where you actually finish up and launch these into your own application. So does anyone have any tips for this week that you would have given yourself?
The thing I wasted the most time on, not the most time probably, but a lot of time on, was the error correction component, the sort of widget where you can go through and collect the errors, fix the errors. I went through, so I had 4 classes. I did soft shell turtles, painted turtles, box turtles, and desert tortoises. And I went through all 8 different categories. So training and validation for all of those, and went through all the drop-down menus and everything, and then ran the code to delete them. But you have to run the code to do the deletions or changes after each iteration, like after you do one category for training or validation, then you have to run the code to do the changes. It doesn't store across all of the categories.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Good catch. How did you even realize that? How did you even realize that?
Well, the same pictures show up as,
yes, exactly.
Right.
Because it's looking at the biggest loss, so it pulls the ones you thought you deleted, it pulls them back up.
Yep. I was like, I know I deleted that map that is not a turtle like 4 times, and it's still there. What's going on?
So you go through just one iteration, one class over training, then go do the thing, then different class training. Okay.
Well, no, you want to do a class, the training, delete it, rerun the stuff, and then the same class validation. Like it's not perfect.
Ooh. You rerun the model just so.
No, you don't need to rerun the model each time. It's just
you don't have to train it.
Yeah.
But you do have to run. I think it's the data loaders cell to get all the correct pictures, because once they're deleted, that file name is still in your data loaders.
Indeed.
So if you try to run it again, it'll crash.
Got it. Got it. Yikes. Good call.
Yeah, somebody should like collect all those little bits and pieces. And actually, that's one of the things I'm thinking of writing a blog about is avoiding all those annoyances.
Yeah.
And that's the primary reason why I built the binder thing was it's one of those missing pieces.
Isn't there a book like that? Something like The Book I Wish I Had for
Yeah.
Linux or something? Yeah.
In my case, it's just a short blog post of those things that you encounter. Yeah, maybe we should collect all those things.
So you said you reran the data loaders, right?
After each cleaning.
Yeah, well, you can go through all the things and delete all the files, but before you can run it again to check for errors, like to get your next version of broken pictures, you have to rerun. I think it was I think I have it pulled up still, but I don't have anything active right now. Let me see.
One additional tip I would have is get familiar with using the Jupyter shortcuts. I think Jeremy kind of mentioned that. I don't know if it was highlighted, but one of the things that really helps is learning how to use Jupyter notebooks, the shortcuts. For those of you geeks who like use Vim and are familiar with Vim, there's a Jupyter extension that allows you to add Vim bindings on Jupyter. But in any case, whether you're using Vim or whatever, or just using the standard default keyboard shortcuts, it really helps to like learn how to use the shortcuts, because you'll be spending a lot of time just playing around with notebooks.
Is that the one where you press H and the shortcuts pop up?
Yeah, but yeah, things like how do you add a cell above, cell below? How do you split a cell, turn a cell from code to markdown or markdown to code? Those little stuff, editing stuff. So after a while, it's like there should be like muscle memory that you figure out that once you're playing around with like notebooks, especially when, because a lot of the notebooks I notice is they have all these steps in one cell. And
Right.
if you want to study what's going on, you want to split all these, break them up into smaller steps. And then when you run one, you want to check so you create another cell, or there's actually a way to, in Colab, and I think even in standard Jupyter notebooks, there's a way to create something called a scratch cell, like a place where you just type stuff and then it'll show what the results are, and it doesn't show up in your notebook. So those kinds of things that really help you is getting familiar with the tools that you're using.
Yeah, sure.
I think sort of related to that, with the way that the notebooks are presented, it's pretty discursive. Like you'll have the start of here's how you load the data, here's a few different tweaks that we can make, and we're going to load some different data. We're going to go through an example. We're going to do a model. We're going to do a different model. At the very end, we're going to do what we said we were going to do at the beginning. I found it really helpful to start with either a new notebook or just a plain file of something and get just a minimal working example. Like cut out all of the examples, cut out all of the asides, just get like one pure working example without all of the other stuff. I found that makes it really, really helpful to figure out what are the key steps, what do you need to do to make it work at a baseline. I've actually found it really useful doing that totally outside of the context of the notebook, get it working in a separate Python file or whatever.
Is that true then from the clean version? Make it even super clean?
Yes.
Like
especially
start
in some of the
nothing.
later chapters. So when you get into chapter 4, that's especially true. It goes off into so many different asides and examples, and it's very helpful. I found it personally very helpful to narrow that down into just one block of code that does exactly what you set out to do at the beginning without all of the asides and examples.
Good advice.
Yeah. To add to that, especially the chapter 4, once you get into that, it also might help to like build something from scratch. Start out with a empty notebook, because that's when you reinforce the learning. When you're like, what do I need to type? And you have a blank screen and you realize you didn't understand anything because you're like, what do I do next? So it's very good to like go back to the old notebook, see what it did there, and from muscle memory, just typing it back in so that you clarify the concepts. And that's been the most helpful thing. I remember, I think I have not exactly hundreds, but lots of notebooks for the chapter 4, just copying that over, running the stuff, understanding, because chapter 4, I think, is one of the most important notebooks in the whole course, because that's the first time it tries to explain what deep learning is. So if you get to that, yeah, start playing around with it a lot.
Hey, just so you guys know, I put in the chat, I just have been taking like little notes on the tips so that you can go in there and you can save the chat and it shows up in your file.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's great advice.
Any other tips?
I would suggest going in and increasing the learning epochs and sort of trying to overfit your model. And I think that was something that was interesting to me. Like I found on my model, the validation loss would increase more than the training loss, what he calls the overfit, at about 8 or 9. But I thought that was I got different results in the cleaner too as I kept training. So I think that was good.
So you said to increase the epics?
Yeah. Try, because I think in the sample it's like 3 or 4. So I think I just put in like 72 and I just watched it, and then once I got to like overfit, I just restarted the notebook and did it again at the level where I thought I should stop. It was good.
Yeah, I mean, from the Bears example, just from cleaning up the bad pictures, I was able to get a confusion matrix with 0 errors.
Nice.
On the validation set. So, I mean, I think his point is do as little training as possible to get that 100% accuracy, and then there is no purpose in going any further. But it did take cleaning the data up to get there.
Garbage in, garbage out, huh?
All day. I did have one other thing. I don't know if anybody else did the vision tutorial, but the last example where it's putting I don't know if it's like a red dot, like to shoot people in the head or what's going on with that, but I didn't get anywhere near the accuracy that what he showed in the book or, in the tutorial itself. Did anybody else do that?
Nope. Is it worth doing?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Other than me not having time to figure out what was going on with that last training, but there's a few different examples in there that I think are valuable. I mean, I learned some things, but it does take. I think I've probably spent a couple hours on it.
That's tough. Like how many?
I mean, even just
hours?
Yeah, but I mean, I was really trying to get into the code and how it was working. If you just loaded it up and just went through and shift enter, shift enter, shift enter, shift enter to see how it worked, you might see one of the examples is like something that you were really interested in, and then spend some time just on that one example.
Are you saying that when you ran the notebook yourself, you didn't get the same accuracy?
Correct. And I posted a link to the Slack channel where I can put pictures or
I think you muted yourself, man.
You're muted.
I'm good at that. I clicked over to this other, my paper space. Let me see. That's in the way. Let me scroll down to the bottom where that picture is. But yeah, it goes through image segmentation and then this thing where it puts these red dots at the center of people's faces.
Yeah, that's like image regression, I guess. It's like you're predicting a point on an image.
Yep.
I've actually done that using the previous version, and I was kind of amazed at how well it worked. It was to find the joints on X-rays, like find all the finger joints.
Yeah.
And it was like within 1% of. It was pretty crazy.
Oh.
Yeah, I think. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see here, like his example is, or my example of running it, I'm like 96.7% on accuracy. But you can see like this one in the bottom down here where it's like in his shoulder. Like it's not even close to hitting him in the head. Whereas, let's see. When you look at what his results are, it's like nearly perfect. And I went through it a few times. Segmentation. So if you look at the different, he doesn't show accuracy, so I guess I should talk about validation loss. But my validation loss is almost 0.1, and his is 0.0002.
Wait a minute. You shouldn't be doing accuracy at all here because you're not running a classification thing.
Yeah.
So maybe you have the wrong loss function. Somehow.
Maybe.
Yeah, go back up to there. Let's see.
The metric.
Data block.
Maybe.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's just, getting all the files and stuff. So I get the same files as him, so I don't think I'm messing that part up. But I thought maybe there was something maybe I missed in the transforms, or I'm not sure.
Did you by chance try it multiple times with different random seeds?
I didn't change the seeds. I don't think I think I probably still have the same seed, but I did retrain it a few times, and I don't even know if I set the seed on this problem.
I think he's not really using random splitters, so it shouldn't matter.
Okay.
Because you're using if you take a look at the splitter, he's using basically one folder as the validation set.
I
Yeah.
see.
What
Sorry,
is
I'm
that?
looking at
It's
a
already
small screen here.
Yeah, it's already split. So I don't know. I retrained it a couple times, and I did get different answers. And I'm not sure about this. I know in PyTorch, if you train something and then you go back and you just add some epochs to it, it doesn't wipe out your training you already took. It just continues from there forward. So I think doing that got me some more accuracy, but it's still, you know, I mean,
What the learning rate did your learning rate graph looks very different?
No, actually, it's very similar.
Looks identical.
it's definitely not identical. It starts in a different place here.
Wait a sec.
It's actually very similar.
Actually, you're running the wrong learner. You say learn.finetune, but it should be learn_PT.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
yeah. Okay. I knew it had to be something simple that I just wasn't seeing. I stared at it too long. You can't see anymore. You turn blind. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, I'll go back and rerun all that stuff. Well, surprisingly enough, running the wrong model still gave.
Yeah.
Well, I have learned PT down here though.
Yeah, but basically what you did was you didn't train the model.
Your head.
Yeah.
Right. Got you. Okay, so it's literally just using the results from Resident 18.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for the extra eyes on that. That helps.
What is that? Is that thing segmenting the head? And
It's actually just locating the point, like one point.
I think it's a note. We're the middle of the face.
It's supposed to be the mass center of the head.
okay.
Which, you know, my garden got destroyed by squirrels, and I would love to set up an airsoft and use this thing to find the center of a squirrel head. Scare those little suckers off.
Oh,
Dig my entire garden up.
that's funny. I have a groundhog problem. Same thing.
Actually, I think it would be really effective if you just played like a hawk sound, you know, big flapping wings.
Yeah.
I hate those.
Maybe just an outdoor cat. Yeah. Thanks for helping.
Sure.
All right. So let me get this going here. Oh, that didn't do well. Anyways, mine is don't give up. Do you see my screen for the Slack channel?
I do.
So there's my little fish thing. So I expect everybody next week, right? You're gonna show this. And then we're all gonna watch you demo your little web application if it ever shows up.
Well, that's loading. This sort of came up at the beginning. Is there kind of an accepted go-to way to have an other category? I mean, for your example, just not a fish.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or mine, not a turtle.
Yeah, I didn't figure that out. I was just glad to get this going. Right?
Yeah. The way I've done it in the past is I'll have a junk folder and I'll categorize things that are just randomly junk. Usually we're studying fairly specific objects, but sometimes the photographer will just hit the button and like take a picture of the ambulance in the infield, or like if it's through a fence, taking a picture through a fence and it's just a terrible image, then we'll just classify those kinds of things that we commonly see into a third category as junk, and to try to filter those out as per them.
Yeah, I wondered if you could use like the probability, like if it's low probability of what you've trained on, then.
Yeah, I think somebody did that in one of the examples, but I didn't really follow. I mean, I was just happy just to get this. And I think if I click on something other than the three fish I have,
I mean, another approach, another
Weird.
like
I tried.
another thing you can try is just to do like multi-category, you know, because like to think about whether you want to do a pure classifier or, you know, whether it really is possible for an image to have more than one, you know, more than one of your things. And that way you kind of naturally get like your junk is basically none of the above. Like if it doesn't have anything, you know, so just doing multi-label classification instead of single label.
Yeah, there was somebody who did it in their GitHub repo that I was looking at. And in fact, when actually Daniel helped me out a lot with his. So I was just comparing how he did his and stuff like that. And then just try to match mine to his. And my, you know, pickle file was fine and all that, but it was just getting this binder thing to kind of work well. But after I got that, then, you know, a lot of hurrahs. I was done for FastAI for a couple hours.
At least.
Another thing I found out, if for those of you who are on Paperspace, that let me see if I can show. I guess it should be in one of the bonus sections, but I put it here. Oh, if you come out. So you see I'm running two, but you know I have like different ones. I find that if you run like 2 or 3, so you're just going to spin one up, right? And you haven't spun one up, and you know you can't get one of the GPU servers. I find that if you have like, you know, another one and you keep checking on either one, sometimes the one will go faster than the other, and you'll actually get a GPU, you know, when they're all hogged. And it's interesting because before I couldn't get, you know, it's like 15 minutes of waiting, but now that I have a account, it does take a little bit, but I haven't done it probably no more than three or 4 minutes. So if you do have Paperspace, just get an account, use the credit, and then, you know, just keep trying. But I would have like more than one notebook to try. So you can just click here, doesn't work, click here, doesn't work, click here, and, you know, you just keep going. And for some reason, it takes faster than if I just had one and I kept trying. It's probably better if I had 2 or 3 notebooks trying it at the same time. Anyways, my little.
Yeah, I think I was lucky that I'm one of the only people on the East Coast, and I get up really early here. So like today I got up at 4:30. There is no problem 4:30 Eastern time getting whatever free GPU you need. But every time after that, after lunch, I found it very difficult. One thing that I've been doing is the free CPUs are available a lot. So if you're just coding stuff out and you're not training a model, so sometimes I think I'm just going through on a free CPU that I can get access to until I get at the point of needing to train, and then I'll close it and then fight to try to get one of the GPUs and then run everything in, you know, at once. I think you're muted.
Helpful tips there?
Is anybody running the on their own like Linux box, like training?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, cool. Okay. Because I've just been going through the process of setting that up, and so I don't know how many people are interested in that, but I guess.
Ping me if you have any problems. I found it was difficult at the beginning. So.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. I guess. Was that Cliff?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So we're at 15 minutes here. Do we have any questions? Should actually stop sharing this slideshow.
Just a note that I tried to do the other category thing a while ago based on probability, but my model thought with a high probability that I was a soft shell turtle, so didn't really work.
Yeah, one of the things that you do when you have this thing running is like because it's a bear classifier, the first thing I do is upload a picture of a cat.
Yep.
And I think that's when you start questioning, well, what if you trained it on something that's not in your, what do you call this? In your training
Domain.
data?
Your domain.
Yeah, I mean,
Topic.
that's kind of a problem with using softmax in general, because it always has to pick something, right? So it's like, even if it gets a really low activation for all of your classes, it has to pick one of them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first picture I chose, it was like some guy, not a bear, and it gave me 97%. And I was like, wow. But then I could never, everything else I did was like 3%. But the first one, he didn't really look like a bear either. But
yeah, so actually that's an active area of research where figuring out detecting basically when you're, because that's the first thing I was like trying to figure out. How do I make my model know when something isn't in your training data? And that's called, I think, out of domain data.
That's right.
That's an active area of research, even in AI, because that's the problem. There's things like adversarial networks where they deliberately change something in your image to make it guess the wrong thing, and basically try to detect when something is off, because humans are very good at that. I mean, we know that it's something we haven't seen before, but in some sense, as smart as we think these models are, it can go wrong very easily, and that's where a lot of the problems come in. So it's an active area of research, and it's actually a good thing that yeah. The first thing we learn is that as good as these models are, they're not really very good at detecting something that we didn't train them for. And I think that's the biggest realization I had when I first encountered it. You know, playing something in the real world. Yeah. So definitely that's an area of research. That's all I wanted to add. Yeah.
So just a reminder, for next week, it'll be lesson 3. Let me show you. So this is the YouTube part. I know they want you to use the other Fast AI one, but what's helpful here is they have this in the notes, and this helps you to kind of like, where was it that he was talking about such and such. So Dave, if you want to go to like lesson 3.
So hello and welcome to.
And then you'll go to show more, right? You notice that they're nothing here, right? So you can't figure out where things are, but this is the video will go through. And of course, in the very probably first half hour, 40 minutes, he's talking about making that app. So this is the lesson we'll go through, and hopefully we have a little bit more people present their stuff or their problem. Maybe Anya can figure out how to do her little thing, and she can show us what she's seeing. So maybe we can help. And I don't know if you want to have a spin-off Docker presentation part, but I guess we can do that too, right?
yeah, maybe the ethics one will be later on code, and it'll be a good
Yeah,
opportunity.
I think the ethics one is pretty light.
Well, if it's, I posted to the Slack the other day, but if it's not too shameless, I'm gonna post my link to my interview with at the Talk Python to Me podcast from last week. If anybody's any interested in hearing about my use of Python at work and everything, so put that in the chat.
Yeah, I love Talk Python. That's a good podcast. You were on that last week?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
it's Python and racing.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, I think it was pretty interesting. I had really positive comments from a lot of people, but you know, a little nervous, you know.
Anyone else? Last chance.
So next week, I see lesson 3 will finish up O2 production, which includes demos of things, and then the beginning of the next chapter 4 or 04 MNIST basics.
Yeah.
Okay.
And does anyone know about lesson video 4? Does that continue on with that?
Does say,
This part, does he
Yep.
keep going with that?
says it's finishing up 04 and then getting into 05.
Yeah, because I think at video 5 is the ethics part.
They skipped 03 and they'll hit that in lesson 5. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to know where lesson 4 or video 4 ended. Anyways, I guess we'll get there next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, if anyone else doesn't say anything, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we'll see.